You have come seeking a crystal, not a common one, not a mass-grown shard pulled from an assembly line of belief. You come because the others did not answer you, because the first 10 were impressive, powerful even, but none of them truly sang when you reached out through the Force. So we have returned to the vault. Before you now stand 5 crystals, each one rare, each one symbolic, each one dangerous in its own way. These are not crystals chosen lightly, nor are they meant for everyone. They are artifacts that demand intent, discipline, and honesty from those who would place them within their lightsaber. Among them is a crystal of immeasurable value, once coveted by those who ruled from the shadows, prized not only for its beauty, but for what it represented. There is a blade heart that judges its wielder, severing itself from those who falter, no matter how noble their intentions once were. There is a crystal born of exile and rage, unmistakably dark, yet belonging to a tradition far stranger than the Sith. There is a shard that amplifies power itself, turning already legendary weapons into something cataclysmic in the hands of a strategist. And there is a blue crystal, cold and unsettling, whose alignment is disturbingly fluid, capable of resonating with the darkness as readily as with the light. These crystals are not merely components, they are reflections of belief, of trauma, of control, of survival. If you choose poorly, your blade will betray you. If you choose honestly, it will reveal who you truly are. We do not tell you which crystal to take, we only present them. The first is the Corusca Gem. It does not begin as a weapon. The Corusca begins as excess. These crystals are born in places the galaxy itself is struggling to survive. Deep within the atmospheres of massive gas giants, where pressure is so extreme that matter is crushed into brilliance. Corusca Gems form as liquefied air scrapes against metallic planetary cores. The closer they develop to these cores, the larger and more vibrant they become. They are not mined casually. They are torn from worlds that actively resist being touched. This alone makes them rare, but rarity was never the Corusca Gem's greatest distinction. Long before they were used in lightsabers, the gems became symbols of wealth, prestige, and galactic reach. Light refracts within them in such a way that they appear to burn from the inside, like a furnace sealed in the crystal. Entire industries formed around their retrieval. Fortunes rose and collapsed on their trade. Even the galactic capital Coruscant carries their name, a quiet reminder that civilization itself once was defined by the value of these stones. But what elevates the Corusca Gem beyond this is who chose to wield it and who chose to use it as a message. At a pivotal moment in galactic history, Palpatine presented Anakin Skywalker with a bag of Corusca Gems. Not a single crystal, a collection, a deliberate stockpile. This was not temptation through greed, it was education. For the gesture to work, Anakin had to immediately recognize what he was seeing, and that tells us something critical. Among the Jedi, Corusca Gems were known, coveted, admired. Their presence in the lightsaber was considered exceptional, and yet, the Jedi believed that only a handful even existed on Coruscant at all. Palpatine shattered that assumption and illusion in an instant. By displaying a stockpile of the gems, Sidious offered Anakin physical proof that the Jedi's understanding of the galaxy was fundamentally limited, that there were trade routes, mining operations, channels of access the Order either did not know about or refused to acknowledge. The gems were not just wealth, they were evidence. Evidence that power existed beyond the Jedi's narrow view of the Force and the galaxy it inhabited. But Anakin rejected them. The gems were priceless, potentially worth millions or even billions of credits, but they could not give Anakin what he wanted. They could not save Padme. In this moment, Sidious learns that accumulation alone will not break Skywalker, but still, the lesson has been delivered. The Jedi did not see the whole board in play. The Corusca Gem would later reappear in a far more intimate way, with Jacen Solo, who wielded a lightsaber powered by a Corusca Gem said to be worth the price of an entire city block of Coruscant. Not metaphorically, literally, a single crystal valued at the scale that bordered on absurdity. The Corusca Gem became what it had always promised to be, prestige refined with power. The Jedi admired its elegance and refinement. The Sith admired its exclusivity and its symbolism. And perhaps most fascinating of all, the Sith did not create this crystal. They didn't corrupt it. They didn't engineer it. They simply recognized its value. The Corusca Gem stands as one of the rare naturally occurring crystals that the Sith held in genuine esteem, not because it screamed domination, but because it embodied access, beauty, and control. The fact that the Jedi valued it only made it all the more desirable. When placed in a lightsaber, the Corusca Gem produced a blade of extraordinary brilliance. Most famously, it is associated with a rich green energy, though descriptions emphasize its exceptional clarity and vibrancy rather than a single fixed color or hue. The blade appears refined, ceremonial. Its glow is intense and luminous, as if the crystal's inner furnace has been given form. Now that we have examined one of the most widely coveted and openly admired crystals known by both Jedi and Sith, a crystal tied to wealth, access, and prestige, it is only fitting that we counter it with something different. Not a crystal of abundance, a crystal of confusion and unanswered questions. Because if the Corusca Gem represented how the galaxy knows about power, the Permafrost represents how much it does not. Permafrost is not merely rare, it is anomalous. Most lightsaber crystals, even the most obscure, obey certain foundational rules. Most lightsaber crystals, even the more obscure, obey certain foundational truths. They channel heat, they contain plasma, they express alignment in ways that can be studied, and even partially understood. Even when their origins are ancient or poorly documented, their behavior fits within the known architecture of a lightsaber's construction. But the Permafrost does not. It is disputed whether Permafrost is even a true crystal variant or whether it is a singular phenomenon that was never meant to exist in quantity. The only confirmed natural source is of course Hoth. Yet no records explain how they form, or how it forms. There is no documented pressure model, no force convergence theory, no mineral lineage that accounts for its creation. Unlike other crystals, whose formation is at least theorized, Permafrost simply appear in historical record without explanation and without origin, and then it moves. During the Galactic Civil War, a permafrost crystal surfaced far from its origin, held by the township of Allya on the world of Dathomir. It wasn't discovered there, it was transported. Ice was carried into one of the most volatile and force-saturated worlds in the galaxy. Why it was moved, who moved it, and whether more existed is never documented. But what truly separates the permafrost from every conventional lightsaber crystal is how it behaves when it's activated. A standard lightsaber blade is superheated plasma contained within a magnetic field. Its wounds cauterize instantly, pain is brief, damage is efficient, but permafrost disrupts the entire assumption. When attuned and installed, the crystal produces a deep icy blue blade, one that carries an unnatural cold, not as a visual effect, but as a functional one. Strikes from a permafrost blade do not simply burn, they induce rapid thermal collapse. Armor struck by it can become brittle in an instant, microfracturing as extreme cold destabilizes molecular bonds before the plasma completes the cut. Materials that would normally resist lightsaber heat can crack, splinter, or shatter, not able to withstand the sudden temperature shock. Instead of overwhelming defenses through heat alone, the blade undermines them structurally. Living tissue fares worse. Rather than immediate cauterization, the freezing element shocks nerves and flesh before the wound seals. Pain lingers, damage spreads, and in some cases, injuries behave less like clean cuts and more like catastrophic cellular failure, where frozen tissue fractures under its own rigidity. The blade does not erase suffering, it prolongs it. This places permafrost outside the accepted framework of lightsaber physics. A crystal that induces cold into a system defined by heat is not a refinement, it's a contradiction. Its alignment only deepens that mystery. Permafrost produces a blue blade, a color traditionally associated with Jedi discipline and clarity. Yet unlike nearly all crystals of that hue, permafrost does not clearly favor the light side. Lore consistently implies that it could be attuned by force sensitives regardless of their alignment, resonating with darkness just as readily as with the light. Most crystals in lore show preference. The permafrost does not, and that brings us to what it looks like when it's awakened. When activated, a permafrost-powered lightsaber emits a deep icy blue blade, darker and colder in tone than the standard Jedi weapons. The glow is dense, frigid, muted rather than radiant, as though the light has been chilled. It is a blue lightsaber that promises no clarity, a lightsaber with no known origin. It is a weapon that violates the rules, The permafrost is not an evolution of the lightsaber. It is a beautiful fracture in its design. But after a crystal defined by uncertainty, the Force offers something radically different. Where permafrost refuses to choose, the Solari crystal does nothing but choose. The Solari is one of the oldest and most powerful lightsaber crystals ever associated with the Jedi. It was not merely aligned with the light side, it was bound to it. The crystal could only function in the hands of a Jedi who was pure in spirit, unwavering in belief, and free from even the slightest pull to the dark side. This is not symbolism, it's enforcement. The Solari doesn't ever bend, and it cannot be corrupted. Its most famous story is tied to one of the greatest and most tragic Jedi hunts in history. The crystal was once in the possession of the ancient Jedi Ud Banar, who gifted it to his exceptionally promising apprentice, Shayla Nur, believing her devotion to the light was absolute. During the Great Hunt, while cleansing the dark remnants on the world of Korriban, Shayla fought alongside her lover and fellow Jedi, Duran Keldroma. When he was torn apart by a Torrentatek before her very eyes, grief gave way to rage, and for the first time, Shayla faltered. She didn't fall to the dark side in triumph or ambition, she reached for it in pain. But that single moment was enough. The Solari crystal responded instantly. Her lightsaber deactivated completely, in the middle of the hunt, surrounded by monsters. Deprived of the weapon that she trusted most, Shayla was ambushed by her quarry and slain. The crystal did not save her, it abandoned her. That moment defines the Solari crystal more clearly than any description ever could. This was not a crystal that could be wielded imperfectly. It required absolute commitment to the light and the Jedi. Even doubt was unacceptable. Even grief was dangerous. It did not allow its wielder to struggle. It demands perfection. In the hands of a Jedi who never wavered, the Solari is terrifying to those that obey the dark. One can only imagine what a weapon like this would have meant in the hands of someone like Grandmaster Yoda, a being so deeply attuned to the light that the dark side itself recoiled from his presence. Against such purity, the Solari would not merely function, it would dominate. For the dark side, facing such a blade would have been an existential threat. And the Sith understand that. Darkside alchemists studied the Solari crystal extensively, theorizing whether it could be corrupted, overridden perhaps, forcibly bent by ritual. There's no evidence that they ever succeeded, but the attempt alone is telling. The Sith do not dismiss the Solari as Jedi curiosity. They too coveted it, they feared it, and they wanted its power for themselves. That fascination reveals something profound. The Solari isn't just a weapon, it's proof that the Force itself can enforce morality, and that is the idea that terrified the Sith more than the blade. The Solari crystal is described as a light orange gem, warm in hue but brilliant in its clarity. When installed in a lightsaber, it produces a radiant golden orange blade, broader than most, with a luminous, sanctified glow. Its blade is exceptionally stable, clean almost. But after a crystal that demanded perfection, the Force offers something more uncomfortable. They offer Exile. Allya's Exile is one of the most underrated crystals in Star Wars, not because of obscurity, but because it represents something the Jedi never wanted to confront. It is a crystal born not from pure dark ambition, conquest, or corruption, but from abandonment. Allya was a Jedi Knight during the Old Republic. She was powerful, gifted, and deeply attuned to the Force. But when she began to drift towards the dark side ever so slightly, the Jedi High Council chose not to execute her, but they chose to rid her of everything she knew, banishing her to the penal world of Dathomir, believing isolation would force reflection and repentance. But it did neither. Stripped of the order, of family, of belief, Allya embraced rage. But unlike the 12 Dark Jedi who were exiled to Korriban and turned inward, competing for dominance and power among one another, Allya's exile took a different shape. On Dathomir, she found a new order, she found community, and through sheer will, she forged a new Force tradition entirely. From her teachings would come the Witches of Dathomir, and from then, the Nightsisters. Allya's exile, the crystal named in her memory, carries that story within it. The crystal is not Sith. That distinction matters here. Sith crystals are forged in hierarchy, ambition, and domination, but Allya's exile burns with rage, but it is a rage shaped by survival and identity. unmistakably darkside aligned, yet fundamentally separate from Sith ideology. In combat, Allya's Exile was infamous for its heat. The crystal imparted an extreme burn of affliction, generating temperatures far beyond a conventional lightsaber. Where most lightsabers cauterize cleanly, Allya's Exile punished. Wounds lingered, pain intensified. The blade reflects the emotional state that it was forged in, furious, unrelenting, and personal. It is rage crystallized, but not nihilistic rage. It is the anger of someone who was discarded, forced to build something new from the wreckage. The Jedi feared Exile would weaken Allya. Instead, it allowed her to found one of the most enduring and unique darkside traditions in galactic history. Allya's Exile is a reminder that the Jedi did not merely fail to stop the dark side. They often created it themselves. After Exile, Rage, and the birth of an entirely new darkside tradition, the Force presents something far more dangerous than anger or belief. It offers amplification and control. The Mantle of the Force is not a crystal that tells you what to believe. It simply gifts you how to win. Rediscovered by merchant Suvan Tan, and later purchased by Revan, the Mantle of the Force emerged near the end of Revan's search for the Starforge. At first glance, the mantle appears unremarkable. It produces no overwhelming emotion. It carries no moral demand. It doesn't punish doubt or reward rage. But what it does is precisely what makes it dangerous. The Mantle of the Force doesn't impose any philosophy. It adapts. When placed in a lightsaber, the mantle alters its behavior based on the other crystals present, amplifying their strengths, reinforcing their dominant traits, and lessening their weaknesses. The mantle deepens lethality. It accelerates bonds. Regardless of configuration, the mantle always enhances force abilities, and that's what makes it truly powerful. In many depictions, the Mantle of the Force is closely associated with Revan, alongside another legendary crystal known as the Heart of the Guardian. This pairing is not incidental. Together they form an important system, a crystal that enhances combat, and one that amplifies force potential. Combined, they can turn a lightsaber from a symbol into an optimized instrument of death, annihilation, or preservation and righteousness. This is why it fits Revan perfectly. He's not driven by purity alone, nor is he unchecked by passion, but Revan is a strategist. He's a planner. He believes the Force can be understood, leveraged, and engineered. The Mantle of the Force reflects that worldview. It is a fail-safe crystal, a modular amplifier, a way to ensure that no matter how circumstances change, that power remains at its peak. It is also telling that the mantle shows no clear allegiance to the light or the dark. Like Revan himself, it exists outside. It enables whatever intent is brought to it. It is a crystal for those that are adaptable, a crystal meant for someone who has planned for failure, but made corrections. When activated in a lightsaber, the Mantle of the Force produces a distinct silver cayenne blade, or it adapts to the color of the other crystal. Similar to that of the Solari, the light of the blade remains clean. It does not flare or pulse typically. It hums with quiet intensity, power being carefully rationed rather than unleashed. It is not a power that draws attention, it is one that endures. That is something Revan understood. While others chased brilliance or symbolism, Revan valued refinement. He valued consistency. He chose it because it worked, and because it made everything else work better. This was a crystal for someone who expected to fight again and again and again. And so, to those who have already chosen a crystal in our previous holocron records, to those whose blades have already been forged in belief, rage, purity, or survival, the Mantle of the Force offers something different. Not a replacement, but an addition and an ascension. It does not ask you to abandon what crystal you have chosen. It strengthens it, and it does not overwrite your chosen path. But now the time has come. You have seen what few are ever permitted to see. 5 crystals, each bearing a different truth about the Force, each offering a different path forward. You may choose only one. There is the crystal of immeasurable wealth and prestige, coveted by Jedi and Sith alike, a gem that once sat in the palm of an emperor and reflected the galaxy's obsession with power and access to that power. There is the blue blade born of ice and mystery, a crystal that breaks the rules of lightsaber design, freezing as much as it burns, and answering darkness as readily as the light. There is the Crystal of Absolute Judgment, one that demands flawless devotion, that failed its wielder the moment grief turned to doubt, and would terrify the dark side itself in the hands of a truly pure Jedi. There is the Blade of Exile and Rage, not Sith, but unmistakably dark, forged in abandonment, identity, and the birth of an entirely new Force tradition beyond the control of the Jedi Order. And there is the final crystal, quiet, unassuming, a mantle rather than a crown. A crystal chosen by a strategist who valued control and victory above spectacle, capable of elevating any blade to its potential. Your choice is made. The others will now be returned to the vault, sealed away once more until the Force calls for them again. But know this, our collection is vast, and Star Wars Legends holds many more crystals still sleeping in the dark. If there is one you wish to see brought forth, one you believe may yet call to you, speak its name below and we will open the vault yet again. And if you wish to remain close to the archives, if you do not want to miss the moment when the crystal meant uniquely for you was revealed, then bind yourself to this holocron, subscribe, and walk with us deeper into the legends. The Force remembers those who listen. The vault is sealed until the next awakening. May the Force be with you.